Our next speaker is Dr. Henning Witte, from Sweden. And Dr. Witte has done the law school at Munich and Uppsala in Sweden and Bonn. And he got his Doctor of Law of Frankfurt University in 1989 and was also admitted to the bar of Hamburg the same year. And he's been working as an international business lawyer since 1989. He's also the founder of Witte, Sweden's first uncontrolled video. And he's going to talk to us today about etheric implants also used in mind control. And please.
Yeah, when Peter Moring called me in the beginning of the year, he asked, could you give a speech on this next conference? I said, sure. What topic? He asked, and I immediately said, etheric implants. And then he said a little bit later, oh, could you also come with the topic legal aspects, because you are a lawyer? And I said, okay, so it was planned that I talk today about legal aspects and tomorrow about the other topic. But then my name for the other day was only the name and not the topic. And yesterday I looked on the internet and I am cancelled for tomorrow. So I only have half an hour today. And I think that is connected to the topic etheric implants, because this is the most dangerous topic of the whole conference, because those being in power here on planet Earth don't like that we scratch on that surface. So I want to start with an homage to Rauni. I'm a board member in UCASH, the European Coalition Against Covert Harassment. She was a board member together with Magnus Olsson. Magnus Olsson is giving a greeting here. He was so hardly attacked by mind control, he was not able to come to Berlin to her, unfortunately. And she was a very strong support in our board. Rauni is here with the white hair. The other lady is Elisabeth, the mother of Magnus. And she was also not able to come. It's very unfortunate. So, what we start with, we must realize that a human being is more than only this body standing here. That is very, very important to know. We have several different energy bodies. And in those energy bodies, there are intelligent beings placing implants. When I was with Lars Drugard on a trip through Germany in winter 2011, we made scannings for the implants in Berlin here and in Hamburg and so on. I didn't know about etheric implants. We were concentrated on the implants in these bodies. And we could show there have been those because we could measure it with scanners, even in Faraday cages later on. But nobody comes to the idea that if there is pinpointer I could get.
Only on the shelf, I think.
No. Well, nobody's coming on the idea that they place implants in here in those fields, because nobody knows that we have those fields already. In medicine, they never study what a human being is, they only study what this body is, and that is very, very narrow-minded. So, what are etheric implants? Well, that are devices placed in the auric field or other bodies, energy bodies we have, to manipulate the frequency of energy in that area of your. They can be of a beneficial nature. That is also important to know. Not every implant, even in this three-dimensional body, is negative. You can help with heart problems and a lot of things. But the majority, of course, are negative, and that's the purpose, because that's a perfect steering instrument. And you can say almost everybody got them. I am convinced I have them, everybody has them. And they are so difficult to detect. the source of knowledge about etheric implants we have from psychic persons all over the world. There are people who can see in a broader frequency range, who can see the aura and so on. Even nowadays we can make photos from the aura with the Russian Kirlian photography and the PEP cameras from Oldfield in England. But there are a lot of humans seeing it. In former times they got killed as witches. That was the real reason for the witch hunt, because they saw too much. And those have narrated for us what they see, what kinds of implants and so on. And then there are built-in traps that you are not supposed to take them out. So therefore it could be that they cause pain when you remove them, or emotional distress and so on. It's a very pity that I only have 30 minutes for the most important topic of this conference. But you can at home, I will fill it, read the text here. I thought I had the time to read at least the text for this. And the problem is also that not every psychic person is detecting every implant. And that's why Simon Parkes recommended we should gather a group of at least 6 different psychic persons, making meetings with TIs, and then those persons are scanning the TIs, because some of the psychic persons detect this kind of etheric implants, others detect other kinds. And where are they implanted? Often in connection with the third eye, with the pineal gland. This is the opening to higher spheres, to the higher layers of our being, to higher dimensions. And often also in the forehead, just left or right in front of the center. What do etheric implants cause? Implants and parasites can be painful and disabling to people in various manners. Many implants function to suppress our frequency, lower our vibration, and limit our perceptions and awareness. Other implants may produce debilitating symptoms, including pain, discomfort, or physical dysfunction. So implants can affect our health, our thoughts, our emotions, and our ability to access our inner guidance. Implants can also be thought of as programs that override the natural programming and operation of our physical body. These implants not only lower your vibration, but they cause people to drain energy, and they act little like a cloak, often concealing entities that lodge in your energy field, also demonic beings or jinns, which can not then be seen or felt. They're very stealthy. They cause you to get internally tight and emit energy, which is why the entities are there in the first place. They drain, they're releasing energy for their own benefit, just like you or I would eat a dinner. And if they torture people, it's also a very good dinner for them, the energy coming out. Now I named some typical kind of etheric implants, the needle implants. They are looking like a needle, very common most of the time. One needler told she sees the body of the needle about a foot or so away from the body, though there have been many times where she has found them wedged into the body. The most common places seem to be over the third eye, solar plexus chakra, and most common of all pointing between the shoulder blades. She has often removed these from people who come and complaining of pain here or having a stuck rib. So this is very vital information for every medicine, for every doctor, because here could be the real reason for some diseases. Pancreas rope looks like a hook into the pancreas with the rope passing downwards through the left hip, thigh and leg. At the ankle level it thickens into a sea anemone-like shape, appears to suppress joy and moving forwards spirituality. Vaginal plug looks like simply like a plug that sits in the etheric version of the birth canal. Also, in our etheric body is like a blueprint for our three-dimensional body, and therefore you have all those parts of the body in the etheric body as well. Prostate G-spot implant, mechanical-looking device that sits in the front surface of the vagina in females and rectum in males. Circle implants. Literally circular-shaped implants, often found underneath the etheric frontal bone of the skull on the right side, where it appears to suppress the beneficial implant commonly seen, overlaying the frontal bone here. Very common over the pancreas, glands, and base of the penis, and over the clitoris. Umbrella implant. Looks similar to an umbrella that is anchored to the crown of the head. There is nearly always a low vibrational being standing nearby who claims to be collecting information. These cause a block of energy flow to and from the crown chakra. We must stop to think that humans are in charge of this planet. That is not the case. It is other beings, a variety of other very negative beings, not being humans. And those are the real culprits when it comes to mind control. And their technology is thousands of years ahead of human technology. Cameras. Through the third eye, healers have often spotted video camera-shaped implants a couple of feet away from the physical body. They appear to monitor as well as cause low vibrational disruptions. Black dragons are most commonly found inside the etheric body of TIs whose aura looks cut, especially anteriorly around the abdomen. They appear most like dragons but can look like other beasts or simply like black balls. When removing these, they do not ever go to the light, only back to the dark. Also, there are usually teams of 3 humanoid-shaped low vibrational beings who turn up after removal, who can be moved to the light. Walnut looks literally like a walnut inside the skull. Jellyfish looks like a large jellyfish that completely fills the inside of the skull with the middle portion over the pineal gland especially. Mechanical scorpion was discovered after the healer was wondering why her extrasensory vision was not working very well and found this lodged over her forehead. So in this picture is mind control and the control of the earth. A lot of different kinds of reptiles are involved. Atlantico-occipital rectangle, like a flat rectangular shaped implant lodged around where the back of the neck meets the back of the skull. These appear to be implanted in people even if they have cancelled contracts, unfortunately. If we have time, we come to the chapter cancel contracts. Spiders seem fairly mechanical looking things shaped like spiders. The healer commonly finds them lodged behind the heart and inside the skull. They are often found in people even after contract cancellation. Scalar arching etheric implants. These are the implants Cobra talks about, and Cobra is the spokesperson for the resistance movement of the light forces on Earth. These are like black holes that are created and maintained by the scalar technologies employed by the Archons. The Archons is a kind of demons being in charge since a long time here ago. And black holes, they lie because black holes could open portals to other dimensions so that they directly can from their dimension interact in our dimension. Every single person incarnated on Earth has these according to Cobra. They exist in 3 locations of the etheric body, the left and right frontal lobes of the brain and the solar plexus. They are designed to suppress free will, emotions, connections to source, benevolent ETs, and sexual kundalini energies. So, and now I play a short part from my most important interview I ever did in my life. This April with Simon Parkes, a politician from the Labour Party in England, in Yorkshire. And he's from the dark forces, but he changed side and has helped a lot of TIs removing implants and giving us vital information on the topic you never can get up to now from other sources. Oh, what's that? They have implants and beam scalar waves to the implants and the commandos, or they have your blood, your DNA, which is an antenna for scalar waves, beaming, sending and receiving, and then they make it that way. And there I saw that you are talking about etheric implants also. So could you brief us a little bit about the world of the implants?
Okay, I will just... I agree with everything you've said, Henning. Everything you've said is correct. But in the high-end families on this planet, the physical torture is still used because it is seen as part of the bloodline tradition. So much of my work is taken up with working with people who have had that physical torture, as you said, to create multiple personalities, suicide programs, then demonic attachments. So although it may seem barbaric in terms of the new technology, it is seen as the right and proper traditional method. The advanced technologies you refer to are for blanket control. Yes, you can bring the beam in to focus on one particular target or one particular individual, but the whole object of that was actually to widen the beam to control groups of people in different parts of the world at the same time, or to control population centres. So the technology that existed now for the last 15, 20, possibly 25 years, in terms of the application of it, because the knowledge has been there for a very long time, that is seen as a wide-scale weapon, not an individual weapon. Because most high-end people, whether they're in the banking industry or in the political line, have had physical torture done to them, but the implants are placed in there to always bring them back should they start to stray. So with the implants, there are two sorts of implants, physical and non-physical. Within the physical, there are two types, human created and alien created. Within the etheric or the auric, there were until very recently only one sort of implant, which was an alien implant. But now the humans have that technology as well, and they can do that. Not all implants are harmful. I have many people who come to me and ask for an implant to be taken out. But before I'll do that, I need to check that it's a harmful implant.
Interesting.
Because there may be a person has a heart condition and some force has placed an implant to make sure they don't die. There are other implants which are not good, but we have to always make sure before we decide to take something out that it's actually going to be the right thing to do. Dr. Lear was a very well-known surgeon who removed physical implants. And I don't know the method that he used in terms of deciding whether one was good or bad, but certainly these were small black objects, smaller than a grain of rice. I always talk about grain of rice, they're actually smaller than a grain of rice. And what they do is they grow DNA tissue from the person around it, so that when that is placed into the individual, the body doesn't reject it.
And gives energy to it.
Well, what it does is it grows connections and neurons through the DNA material to physically touch the metal part of the implant, so that the implant then has connection to the spinal cord, wherever it's placed. You see, you can't just put an implant into somebody. There has to be what they call an interface between the implant and the individual. So the body of the individual, it's the law of the universe. The body has to accept it. So it grows. Right. I have a shop. This is how universal law works. If I have a shop and I sell things, I could stand outside the shop and shout that I've got an orange for sale, but it's much better if you knock on the door and come in and say, I'd like to buy an orange. So what happens is the body grows the neurons through and connects to the implant, so that in the universal law, the The body came to the implant, so the body wants the implant. So with an implant, the reason the body doesn't reject it is because, first of all, it sees it as part of itself, and the reason that the bad guys say that they have a right to implant people is because the body is growing into the implant and accepting it. So that's the argument they use. Of course it's wrong, but that's the argument they use. So a wide range of implants, doing everything from monitoring somebody, checking their body through satellites, or psychic control where they are at any time, able to give them a migraine, able to make them just faint straight away on the ground, able to make them change their mind, give them video pictures or straight pictures or words or voices in their head. It's really quite fascinating from a professional standpoint. Yes. It is, but from a human standpoint, it's evil. Yes. It's disgusting, and it has to stop. Yes. But technologically, it's very, very clever.
Yeah, of course it is.
But that is the high end for the group control. But as I come back to finally, through bloodlines, it is always the hard torture, the electric shock treatment, the use of puppets or cartoon characters to split the person's personality. So I wouldn't want you to think they've stopped all that. Mm-hmm. That's still going on and will always go on as long as they're in control.
Concerning referring to the etheric implants, I once got it described. It is like a hood with cables coming out and things like that.
That's interesting. Well, no. What's been described there is a form of technology that isn't there at the time. That's a vision that somebody has. When I'm deprogramming somebody, that person will always have a vision of the program or the implant. That is how it appears to them. This is the first stage of deprogramming them. So somebody's higher self is trying to warn the physical body there is something here, and this is how it appears to that person. When an implant is placed in electronically or etherically, the other person at the other end, the bad guy, will wear a device to boost, it's usually a male, to boost his psychic strength. So the cap you're talking isn't worn by the victim, but it is worn by the person who is sending that, because it is boosting.
Interesting.
Not on all cases, but on some cases. Mm-hmm. So that can divide into colours, numbers, shapes, and different commands and different information. You see, you mustn't just think of the brain sending one message. The brain can be split and send lots of different messages. Mm-hmm. So it's very complicated to explain. But what you're seeing there is a construct, how somebody would see it. I'll give you an example. The oldest person I've ever helped was nearly 60. So the type of programming there was very primitive. It was yellow brick road programming. But the youngest person I ever saw was 16 years old. So here the programming is far more advanced. And in this case, there were traps laid for people like me. Because back 40, 50 years ago, they didn't expect anybody would be able to deprogram, so they never put booby traps in. Well, now they know there are people who deprogram the programming, so they put booby traps in to try and catch you, or to trigger a suicide program in the individual. So it's very much like the old films of bomb disposal, where you have the wire cutters and you think, well, which cable do I cut? Is it the red or the green?
Awful. Yes,
because we're not talking about breakfast cereal, we're not talking about motor cars, we're talking about real living people.
Yes.
You know, and I will help anybody who wants to get better.
Simon Parkes, as I said earlier, strongly recommends Henning, forget about all the scanners and mechanical devices to remove implants and things like that. Most of the implants are not put there mechanically, but by psychic ability, by beings having so much psychic power that they can manifest everything they only think about. So they put the etheric implants into humans by psychic power, and therefore Simon Parkes said, the only chance to really fight against it is also with psychic power. He has that. He can see this, some, not all, and remove it. Therefore his suggestion that we shall collect people in the world having this power. I have already got 4 or 5 psychic people who have contacted me and said, we want to get with you and Simon work in this group, but we need more. And especially later on, we need it for every country, so that the TIs can book a visit with those psychic persons and get a relief by this. And that is also important that you first figure out why this implant, the etheric implant, is there, because not every etheric implant is negative. So one could make mistakes if you remove positive ones. And therefore you need a lot of experience. But Simon Parkes is willing to teach us on that topic. And that I am very grateful about. I heard just now it is not possible to book sessions with him. He is overbooked until March next year. But later on perhaps it will be possible again. But we can't move on with fighting against mind control if we don't have the whole picture. And fortunately, a lot of people have already been awakening that they understand that a human being has more bodies than only this body. That is the first vital point to grasp if you want to continue to fight this topic. I proceed with some other interesting things. Twisted eddy currents of energy. This is a description of a psychic person. Implants act to dumb down or limit people from experiencing their full awareness. They also act to prevent people from being able to feel or intuit external distorting influences coming in through their energy fields and affecting the choices people make. One way to describe these are twisted eddy currents of energy that emit various frequencies which creates something akin to white noise. People are internally distracted by the noise which lowers their vibrations, and since it is so prevalent, then fades into the background of our experiences. This twisted eddy currents of energy is a very good description. I hope that every targeted individual now has learned about the research from Professor Witte in Germany about scalar waves. That they are using scalar waves in mind control, not electromagnetic waves. Our body does not have antennas for electromagnetic waves, only scalar waves. And as long as we don't know that, we got the problem with the tin-foiled heads. Because what is the TI doing, sensing, oh, somebody is beaming on me? He takes precautions in the old thinking, it's electromagnetic waves, therefore I have a tin-foiled head, or I have aluminium in the wall of my room. But unfortunately, those guys don't get any shelter from the tin-foiled heads or other things, because there are not electromagnetic waves used, but another form of waves, scalar waves. And Professor Witte started his career as a physics professor with the research of eddy currents, Wirbelströme auf Deutsch. And the scalar waves are kind of eddy currents, vortexes. And they are also causing a so-called white noise. Because the difference between electromagnetic waves and scalar waves is that the electromagnetic wave is propagating constantly with the speed of light. That we all knew. The scalar waves are longitudinal waves, only propagating this way. And they don't have a constant speed of propagation. Their speed of propagation is varying, and in this varying, they put mind control information. And the physicists call the phenomena close to an antenna, especially mobile phone antennas and so on, they call that white noise. Rauschen auf Deutsch. And this is caused because the scalar waves close to those antennas have different frequency and different speeds. and therefore you can't pinpoint them. You only get this white noise. So this is a very interesting confirmation by a psychic person what Professor Konstantin Weil has researched and published about the scalar waves. Because they must use scalar waves to mind control, because they have to influence our bodies, and the bodies are nothing more than biological computers for the soul. So if you know the technology of our body, and know that they use scalar waves, you use scalar waves to make mind control, because otherwise you wouldn't have any result. And until recently, last year, it was believed that there was no way of removing these etheric implants until the scalar technologies are removed from the planet. However, others have managed to remove this simply by cancelling any soul contracts we have with the archons or archons, thus stopping them from continuing to exist with us. This is also important information for TIs and all of us. There's often old contracts. Goethe's Faust is very known about them. Der Pakt mit dem Teufel, the contract with the devil. A lot of humans do that. The Beatles did it to get famous and so on. And when you make such a contract with black powers, they also want their part. And then they use it, a contract, a lot of reincarnations before, still harassing you. And therefore you should stop and cancel this contract. So if you want, we can all speak what is there. Perhaps it helps. Do you want that? Yeah? Okay. So please say, by the power of God that I am, I command that all contracts that allow implants to be placed and maintained within me be cancelled permanently, now and forever. So be it. So once more. By the power of God that I am, I command that all contracts that allow implants to be placed and maintained within me be cancelled permanently, now and forever. So be it. And the best thing would be in your prayer every day, you take this one as well. Now let's see whether this film has... No, it's a very pity. We could, perhaps, I don't know how much time I left, but this film is on the internet, of course, but this takes time, I don't know. It's a pity because Simon Parkes is the best source of what's really going on in mind control. And I warmly recommend you to look up this interview with me on the internet. It's only Simon Parkes, Henning, Witte, then you will find it. It is translated into German language by the Honigman page and by Joe Conrad from the Wust TV. So those not being so good in English, there is a translation, it's not the best one, but anyhow. Okay, bye. Yeah, okay. Have you ever heard of acoustic weapons, like long-range acoustic device photography? Yes, of course. That is very, very old and primitive technology, only used in the 50s. I think they have the first patents already from the end of the 50s, the so-called voice to skull. And this is tormenting a lot of people also. But only a minority. Usually they don't let people know that they are under mind control, because then it's not so effective. But they need a little smaller group. Most of them are gathering here today, the so-called TIs, targeted individuals, to train the computers, because a little minority is not able to handle 7 billion people on Earth. You need computers for that. And therefore you need to train computers if somebody of the TIs or somebody of the mind control victims is waking up. And therefore a little minority is allowed to know or hear more so that the computer can test the reaction and can take countermeasures. So.
If you had a contract.
Yeah.
Just now we were saying this kind of prayer or assessment to resolve a contract. But when have you done the contract? When you were asleep? Or maybe someone else did it for you? Or you don't remember, just you don't remember?
No. You made it fully on purpose. Often in an earlier life, you must realize that reincarnation is not a question of religion, but a question of law of nature. We all reincarnate. And in this or in former lives, you're fully on your mind and not sleeping, that you want to get advantages of the system, and therefore you make a contract and agreement with the devil, it is easily called. It's this kind of contract. The Germans know about who read the Faust.